It is, well, it's exactly 4:15 on a sweltering Friday afternoon. You can already taste the cold schooner of beer waiting for you at the local pub. But in the workshop, there's a backlog of vehicles as long as your arm, and the site manager is flat out reminding everyone that if these rigs aren't moving by Monday, heads will roll. So what happens? A mechanic slides under a massive utility truck to weld a leaking fuel tank. But wait, all the heavy-duty jacks are already in use. No worries, he thinks. He grabs a forklift, hoists the front end of the 3-ton truck into the air and props it up, with a single bent piece of scrap steel pipe he found in the bin. And the supervisor? Well, he quietly sneaks out the back gate 20 minutes early to beat the traffic and get a head start on that pint. You reckon this is just a story about a lazy worker and a bad boss? Think again, mate.
When this inevitably goes pear-shaped, and believe me, it does, the default reaction from the boardroom is always to point the finger. Oh, the operator made an error of judgment, unsafe behaviour. But if you actually dig beneath the grease, you find what Patrick Hudson called the lethal cocktail. Violation plus error equals disaster. In his model, the biggest single predictor of why people break rules isn't laziness, it's expectation. It's that unwritten, heavily rewarded rule that you have to bend safety if you want to get the job done on time. Combine that with rubbish planning, running a multi-million-dollar site on the fly with no spare jacks, no maintenance windows, just constant on-the-fly decisions. And you realize the worker didn't design this trap. Leadership did. And how does that trap get set up in the first place? Well, it starts way before Friday afternoon. It starts in air-conditioned offices where boardroom executives make decisions to bump up production targets or cut back on maintenance contractors, all while pretending nothing has actually changed. They bypass the formal management of change process entirely because, hey, we're just optimizing efficiency, right? But let's call it what it is. It is leadership teams approving change without admitting that it is change. When you silently trade off risk by squeezing resourcing and piling on pressure, you are quietly loading a gun, putting it in the frontline worker's hand, and then looking shocked when it goes off. Bypassing that mock process doesn't save time, it just guarantees systemic failure. Now, let's say the worst happens. The truck slips off that scrap bar, and we get sent in to do an ICAM investigation. We write a cracking, evidence-based report that points directly to these systemic issues. We hand it to the executive team and... This is the moment that defines you as an investigator. Because so many times the leaders look at the price tag of fixing the system and they start sanitizing the recommendations. They dilute real engineering controls into safe, cheap, and completely useless administrative fixes. They don't want to buy new hydraulic hoists or hire more mechanics. Instead, they want to print out a glossy new Safety First poster or run a mandatory safety awareness slide deck. Because as we all know, a poster on a lunchroom wall is highly effective at stopping a 3-ton truck from crushing a bloke, isn't it? I remember a classic case on a mineral site a while back. A heavy conveyor line had a massive gap in the guarding. A worker nearly had his arm taken off in a nasty near miss. The investigation team recommended a proper engineered guarding upgrade. Costly? Sure, but it physically isolated the hazard. Well, the executive team looked at the budget, choked on their flat whites, and rejected the recommendation. Too expensive, they said. Instead, they painted a yellow line on the floor and put up a warning sign. Guess what happened 6 months later? Exact same conveyor, exact same gap, and another worker's arm nearly got torn off on the exact same causal pathway. Why? Because the latent hazard was left completely intact. Here's the cold, hard truth that every director and board member in this country needs to understand. Under modern WHS due diligence laws, you cannot negotiate with a hazard. When an investigation reveals a systemic, latent risk and you decide to reject the engineering control to save a few bucks, you aren't erasing the danger. You are making a conscious choice. Because what we choose not to fix becomes what we choose to risk. You are actively signing your name to that risk, and you are transferring the personal, criminal legal liability straight to your own desk. So, next time you go to reject an ICAM recommendation because it's too expensive or too hard, Ask yourself if you're personally ready to stand in front of a coroner and explain why a yellow painted line was worth a bloke's life. Think about it. Anyway, that's my 2 cents for today. Catch you next time, in the corner.